What's up, gang? Stephen Marshall, themanslife.com. And I wanted to share some thoughts with you in light of the recent passing of our 41st president, George Herbert Walker Bush, or as I'll refer to him as 41. It is commonplace when someone dies to remember all of the good things and to forget the bad things. And that's appropriate. The old saying in the South was, you don't speak ill of the dead. And I'll have to say that abiding by that phrase is particularly easy when it comes to President Bush. It is often difficult when a political figure dies to separate the person from the politician, or to separate the person from the political actions of the person, from the political decisions of the person. But I think that if we can do that, and many have done a fantastic job of it, I think if we can do that, we're going to be very appreciative of what a man President Bush was. If you just look at his accomplishments in public service and in his life, simply amazing. Okay, he is a combat veteran who was wounded and almost killed in action as a fighter pilot in the Navy. He was director of the CIA. He was an envoy to China. He was vice president under one of the most monumental presidencies of our generation, Ronald Reagan, which saw the collapse of communism and the U.S. emerging victorious in the Cold War. And he went on to be a wartime president himself, with a quick and decisive victory when Iraq invaded Kuwait. So those accomplishments politically and we'll call them career accomplishments were, more than anybody watching this will accomplish, more than likely. But to go beyond that, in that he was married to one woman for 70 years. And not just married to her, but seemingly in love with her for that time period. And, I was reminded of his quote that, if he could, what he would want to be if he had another life, and he very quickly, without hesitation, said the second husband of Barbara Bush. So clearly he had a fantastic and long-lasting marriage, and his marriage produced wonderful kids. George W. Bush, President of the United States, number 43, one of my favorites. And again, I don't necessarily mean politically. I disagreed politically with the Bushes on a number of issues and in a number of ways. That's fine. But that family clearly has a character and a fiber to them that is of the highest quality. And that's what I want us to think about. During his political career, President Bush 41 was often referred to as wimpy. He wasn't a big strapping guy when it comes to musculature, and he did not have a deep or commanding voice. One of the best impressions of all time is Dana Carvey doing President Bush 41. Fantastic. You younger folks, you're going to have to Google that. You folks my age and older, you'll remember it well. One of the first kind of outstanding political impressions. So he didn't strike us as, man, That guy is a man's man. And another reason is simply because he was very decent. Now, every politician who makes it to the national level knows how to play hardball. Okay, you simply just don't get there if you're not able to play hardball. Okay, so George H.W. Bush was a man's man. He might not have looked the part, he might not have sounded the part, but if you look at what he accomplished, both in his career and in his family, he was a very masculine man. And we should not let the fact that he was decent, that he was kind, that he was polite, that he was deferential, we shouldn't let that detract from his masculinity. If you look at my Facebook page, I posted an article that David French wrote for the National Review yesterday or the day before, making that very point. But I wanted to make it as well. Because simply put, one of the things that too many people have liked about President Trump is the fact that he's willing to not be decent at times. And I'll grant to you, there are times when the gloves have to come off. That's simply part of being a man, is figuring out those times and being able to take the gloves off and do battle. You got to have both. And if you look back at President Bush 41's life, it's clear that he knew how to do that. Okay? Combat veteran who was wounded. Wartime president who was victorious. Made it to the national level as a politician and in private sector work. So I just want us to appreciate his masculinity, his manliness, and his decency. In his life, you will find some of the best examples of what I call being good at being a man as well as being a good man. We need both. We need to be good men who are decent, who are kind, who protect the weak, who are polite, who are deferential when appropriate. All of those things. But we also need to be good at being men. Okay? We need to be strong. We need to be courageous. We need to be skillful. And so I just want to encourage you on both of those, in both of those spheres, to look at his life and appreciate his life in those regards. The second thing I wanted to point out was his letters to his wife and his children have come to light in his death. And they are some of the most heartwarming things that you'll ever read. I think I'm accurate to say that one of the deepest desires of every parent's heart is to be able to adequately communicate to our children how much we love them. I know that, that's the thing that I want to make sure of, is that when I die, I'll die in peace if I feel like I've communicated to my kids how deeply I care about them and how much I'm for them. And if you look at President Bush 41's letters to his family, they do that very thing. Back during the summer, I wrote on the blog about how my mom died when I was 9. And I was able to gain access to, after she died, to her diary, which contained her thoughts while she was undergoing cancer. And the thoughts as she pertained to me were about how much she loved me and about one of the things that she was going to miss if she died the most was watching me grow up. And being able to get a real sense in her words about her deep love for me was very important to me as a young boy. And so to that end, I encouraged all of you, I did in this blog post, and I do again, to create a journal for your kids. If your kids are grown and they live somewhere else, you can write them letters like President Bush did. Okay, you can do that for your wife. You can write them letters that help to communicate that. But that's kind of odd to do for your young kids who still live with you. And so I suggest keeping a journal that allows you to express what's in your heart towards them. That way, either when they're grown or when you're gone, they'll be able to look back at those things, and it will renew in their minds and in their hearts what was in your mind and in your heart towards them. And it'll, when you write it, it's as much for you as it is for them, to help make sure that they're going to understand that, because that's the deep desire of our heart as parents. So I just wanted to honor President Bush by making sure that we as men appreciate those things about him. Someone who was a good man, someone who was good at being a man, and someone who, as a parent, made sure to communicate to his children, and as a husband, made sure to communicate to his wife his deep love for them. So if we can walk in his footsteps and follow his example, we'll be doing a hell of a job. Until next time, appreciate you guys. Godspeed.